Hello everyone, Chainsaw Valkyrie here, your Appalachian princess, coming to you again with another chapter of Tales from the Holler. This story is a real treat, or is it a trick? Either way, it's killer, it's to die for, and you won't want to be going out at night after you hear about Mad Jack. For 32 years, always on Halloween, he comes a-callin', bringing bloodshed and screams. His heart has no mercy, it's shriveled and black. He's darkness and evil, his name is Mad Jack. 33 years ago this very day, in an old tater field he was carried away by a large hairy killer that is called a clodhopper. This Sasquatchy fiend is a frightful heart stopper. The clodhopper took him to old Brogy Holler, near the old muddy pits where the boars go to waller. And the beast broke his body and clawed up his head, then started to eat him before he was dead. But before he could make Jack his dinner-time feast, a voice shouted out, "Drop him right there, filthy beast!" The command issued forth from the foul Granny Ferris, the queen of the witches, the devil's own heiress. The creature gave heed and as once dropped his victim, then held up his long bloody fingers and licked him. He snarled and he growled and then made his way home, and Jack and the witch were left there all alone. The witch started dragging Jack back to her place, unaware that a boy by the name of Joe Pace had seen everything, and he told Frank and Dottie about the clodhopper and the witch in Jack's body. Franklin advised him, "Forget what you saw. Don't tell his family, his friends, or the law. Keep it a secret, or she'll kill us both dead. She'll send something evil to cut off our heads." Joe kept it quiet, Franklin told Daisy Dottie, who later told Catherine, who told Billy Roddy. That's how we know what became of old Jack, before he was changed and before he came back. And back he did come from the dead a year later, from when he had died while out digging taters. He came from the dead on Halloween night to murder the living and fill them with fright. He stalks through the land like a shadow, a shape, with a face deeply scarred by the clodhopper ape. His visage adorned with a large manic grin, come back to slaughter both family and friend. His skin pale and white, looking ghastly and ghoulish, his heart set to do things wicked and cruelish. He's massive and tall, a most fearsome sight, and his clothes are as black as a deep starless night. Jack has the strength of 10 or more men, and when he comes home each year the bloodshed begins. His weapon of choice is a large butcher knife, which he used to dispatch Dilbert Crow's wife. He strangled poor Delbert with a telephone cord, then he plunged his great knife into Delbert's poor gourd. Then Jack went next door and he slew Jeffrey Hardy, and then 7 kids at a Halloween party. From the party he went out to Rob Schuman's farm, where he bashed Robert's head and he chopped off his arm. Rob's goodly wife Shelley had a gun in her hand that she used on the killer who chopped up her man. She shot him 5 times and he fell on the floor. Then he slowly stood up and he strode out the door. Next he went out to the local corn maze, and he watched a large crowd with his cold, steely gaze. Inside he was raging, he was angry and seething, but made not a sound, except his ominous breathing. He picked up a sickle lying there on the ground, and he used it to kill them and cut them all down. He killed several more on that Halloween night. Then he was gone, with no trace by first morning light. And that was the last the town saw of the fiend, until the next year, on the next Halloween, when he came back and murdered about 20 more, and then vanished just like he had done once before. And that's how it's been here for 31 years. Tonight's 32, if Mad Jack appears. He's a black force of nature, this killer most silent. The immortal fiend is both brutal and violent. He cannot be killed, it's one thing we've learned. He's been stabbed, he's been shot, he's been bludgeoned and burned. He's been chopped with axes and electrocuted. This thing cannot die and can't be executed. Jack never runs, he walks ever so slowly. Jack never speaks, not a word even lowly. All you can do is survive till he's done, till he goes back in hiding with the rising of sun. I hope that tonight Jack just wouldn't appear, that he'd go somewhere else and would not come here. I knew hope was lost when I heard a loud scream. Jack had come home to partake Halloween. A little bit later someone found a dead body. They thought that might have been Brenda Gale Dottie. Her mangled cadaver was a grim, bloody warning that Mad Jack was here and would be until morning. Jack then cut off the head of Jerry Magruder, who worked twice a week as a basic math tutor. Jack found him half conscious in a self-induced stupor, then hollowed his head with an old melon scooper. He cut out the eyes and then cut off the nose, then inserted a candle to give it a glow. He next stabbed to death the rotund candy eater. He was stocky and fat, this obese trick-or-treater. People were screaming and fled in a panic from the undying thing, but the smile that was manic. We found a large bowl filled with blood-spattered candy, along with some pieces of a feller named Andy. Old Arthur Gothard was the next one to perish. His manner of death was completely nightmarish. His grizzled old face was cut plumb off his head. He was nailed to a tree and left hanging there dead. Then Jack stabbed his knife into dead Arthur's heart and cocked his head sideways, admiring his art. Then off to a barn Jack silently strode, out past the pond where the bullfrogs abode, where he killed Angus Mickle with an old tater fork and pulled off his head with a great wrenching torque. He went farm to farm, full of anger and malice. At the last farm he killed an old lady named Alice. He then took a hammer and killed Billy Hatch, and beat him to death in an old pumpkin patch. Then Jack set his sights on my brother and me, and it didn't take long to decide we should flee. We fled to our barn where we kept Lulabelle, our old milking cow with a badly scarred tail. We jumped on her back and away we did ride, across several farms where so many had died. Jack watched us going with that smile on his face, then started walking toward us at his slow walking pace. We rode through the forest, and boy it was rough, till we came to the edge of Looney Ridge Bluff. Lulabelle stopped there, dead in her tracks, and right behind us was the killer Mad Jack. He stood there in silence. He looked very eerie. Our hope for survival looked dismal and dreary. Trapped on the edge of that mountain abyss, the thought we would die I just couldn't dismiss. Jack crept closer to us with his slow walking gait, as we sadly awaited our now hopeless fate. Jack looked at us with eyes full of malice, no mercy in them. They were cold, black, and callous. Jack raised his knife. This was the very end. We would die here alone with our milking cow friend. Lulabelle moved. She panicked and snorted. For a moment the killer's attack was aborted. Then Jack swung his blade and hit Lulabelle's tail, and she lashed out and kicked him, and he stumbled and fell off the cliff's edge and 100 feet down, where his body lay twisted and broke on the ground. We found to our horror with the coming of dawn that Mad Jack was missing. His body was gone. The undying evil escaped like before, to come back next year and to slaughter some more. My brother and me and our cow Lulabelle made our way home, where we doctored her tail. We gave her some water and a whole lot of hay, to say thanks for her saving us both on that day. It's been almost a year since Jack had his great fall, and soon he'll try to come back and murder us all. So lock up your doors, friend, and lock them up tight, 'cause Mad Jack is coming on Halloween night. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to tune in and signing up for our channel, and stay creepy.